A millionaire CEO's world changes when a 6-year-old girl calls him, "Your son is on the street. He's not moving." This is a suspenseful, heartwarming story of fear, courage, and the true meaning of love. The sun stood proudly in the sky, pouring golden light over the glass towers of the city. People rushed below, their footsteps tapping against the pavement like an endless drum. Inside the tallest building, Ethan Miller sat at the very top floor, behind a desk so wide it could hold a dozen files of contracts. His office sparkled with wealth, polished wood, leather chairs, and walls of glass that showed the city at his feet. To everyone else, Ethan was untouchable. At 35, he was already one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. His phone usually buzzed with calls from directors, investors, and wealthy partners. Numbers, money, and business ruled his days, but not his heart. That afternoon, as he signed papers with a steady hand, his phone rang again. He didn't expect anything unusual, maybe another deal to close, maybe another factory update. But when he lifted the phone to his ear, a fragile, trembling voice filled the line. "Sir, your son, he's on the street, he's not moving." Ethan's pen slipped from his hand and rolled across the shiny desk. His chest tightened. The calm, unshakable mask he wore in business meetings cracked instantly. He gripped the phone harder, his knuckles turning white. "What did you say?" His voice was sharp, but underneath it was pure panic. On the other end, the tiny voice broke again. "Your son, Ryan, he fell. I think he's not waking up." Ethan pushed his chair back so fast it slammed against the floor. His heart thundered in his ears. Ryan, his little boy, only 6 years old. The boy who smiled when he held his hand. The boy who sometimes drew messy pictures for him, waiting for him to come home late at night. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, his voice shaking. "Tell me where you are." "My name is Lily," the little girl whispered. "I'm 6 too. I don't know what to do. Please come fast." Her words cracked with fear, yet there was courage in her small voice. Ethan could almost picture her, a tiny child clutching his son's hand, her own eyes wide with tears. Ethan's breath grew short. He had faced angry investors, collapsing companies, and billion-dollar risks, but nothing felt as terrifying as this moment. His son's life was in danger, and all the money in the world meant nothing now. "Don't leave him! Stay right there with him! I'm coming!" Ethan said, his throat tight. He slammed the phone down, grabbed his car keys, and rushed out of the office. His assistant stared as he ran through the hallway, but he didn't care. For the first time in years, he wasn't a CEO, he wasn't a billionaire, he was just a father, desperate and afraid. The city outside had never looked so cold. Cars honked, people shouted, but all Ethan could hear was that little girl's voice echoing in his head. "He's not moving." Sweat covered his palms as he sped toward the address she gave. His mind painted terrible pictures. Ryan lying alone, Ryan's eyes closed. Ryan slipping away. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his hands ached. His lips moved in a prayer he hadn't spoken in years. "Please, God, don't take him from me. Please let him be safe." The phone call had lasted less than a minute, but it had destroyed the wall around Ethan's heart. For the first time, he realized how fragile his world truly was. He had thought power made him untouchable, but in one trembling voice from a child, he discovered the truth. Life could shatter in a second. And at that moment, nothing else mattered. Not contracts, not meetings, not millions. Only his little boy, only Ryan. The city blurred past as Ethan's luxury car tore through the lanes like a beast unleashed. His heart pounded louder than the roaring engine, his breaths shallow, uneven. The streets he had traveled 1,000 times for business meetings now felt like a battlefield. Every red light, every slow car in front of him was a cruel enemy, keeping him from his son. "Hold on, Ryan. Hold on, son," he whispered to himself, gripping the wheel until his knuckles turned white. His eyes burned, but he refused to let a tear fall. Not yet. Not until he reached him. Flashes of Ryan filled his mind. The way his son laughed when he chased Bubbles in the backyard. The way his little arms wrapped around Ethan's neck after a long day. The way his small hand had once pressed against Ethan's chest and said, "Daddy, your heart is so strong." Now, Ethan's strong heart felt like it was breaking. At last, he turned a corner and his car screeched to a halt, his eyes locked on the sight that would haunt him forever. There, on the sidewalk, lay Ryan. His small body was limp, his school bag tossed beside him. A little blonde girl knelt by his side, holding his tiny hand with both of hers, tears dripping onto the pavement. Ethan's legs moved before his mind did. He stumbled out of the car, his expensive shoes slamming against the concrete. He dropped to his knees so hard they scraped against the ground, but he didn't feel the pain. His entire soul was focused on one thing: his son. "Ryan! Ryan!" His voice cracked, torn between authority and raw desperation. He shook the boy gently, terrified to see no response. Ryan's face was pale, his lips pressed shut, his chest rising so faintly it was almost invisible. Ethan felt as if the ground had been ripped out beneath him. The world, his world, shattered. "No, no, no," Ethan whispered, his throat closing. He cupped Ryan's cheeks, his trembling hands brushing over the soft skin. "Please, son, open your eyes. Please." Beside him, the little girl sniffled, her small voice shaking. "I didn't know what else to do. So I called you. I found your number in his bag." Ethan turned to look at her, and for a moment, his heart softened through the storm of fear. She was only 6, just like Ryan. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her tiny hands trembling, yet she hadn't left his side. She had chosen to act when so many grown-ups around them had walked by. The realization hit Ethan like a heavy blow. Strangers had passed, adults had looked, and yet none stopped. But this little girl, with no power, no wealth, had been the one to kneel beside his boy. His throat tightened. His voice was raw as he whispered, "You're braver than anyone I know. Thank you for not leaving him alone." But his eyes returned to Ryan quickly. He pressed his ear close to his son's lips, desperate to feel even the faintest breath. Relief trickled through him when he felt a weak puff of air. "Stay with me, Ryan," Ethan begged, his tears finally breaking free. His shoulders shook, his forehead pressed against his son's. The mighty CEO, the man feared in boardrooms, was now just a broken father on his knees in the middle of the street. The little girl tightened her grip on Ryan's hand, her teddy bear resting by her feet. "Don't let him go," she whispered, her innocent plea slicing through Ethan's heart. Ethan pulled Ryan into his arms, cradling him as if holding on to life itself. He looked at the girl once more and gave a firm nod. "We're taking him to the hospital. Come with me. Don't let go of his hand." For the first time in his life, Ethan understood that true strength wasn't in power or wealth. It was in the small, fragile, yet fearless hand of a child who refused to let another child suffer alone. And so, with his son in his arms and a stranger's little girl by his side, Ethan ran, not as a CEO, but as a father desperate to save the heartbeat of his world. Ethan's arms tightened around Ryan's limp body, as if holding him closer could force life back into him. His usually deep, commanding voice cracked like a broken branch. "Stay with me, son. Don't leave me. Daddy's here, please." Ryan didn't answer. His small head rested against Ethan's chest, and the weight of his silence crushed Ethan more than the weight of skyscrapers ever could. Beside him, Lily scrambled to her feet, her teddy bear tucked under her arm. Her tiny face was wet with tears, yet she stayed close, refusing to step back. "Please don't let him go," she whispered, her words trembling like glass. Without another thought, Ethan sprinted to his car. He yanked the back door open and gently laid Ryan across the seat. His hands shook so violently he almost dropped the keys. "Hold his hand," he ordered, his voice shaking. Lily climbed into the back seat and gripped Ryan's small fingers with all her strength. She pressed her teddy bear against him, as though sharing comfort. "I'll keep him safe," she whispered fiercely, her childlike determination glowing in her tear-filled eyes. Ethan slid behind the wheel. His foot slammed on the gas and the powerful car roared down the street. The tires screeched, the engine howled, but inside the car there was only silence, broken only by Ethan's desperate breaths. "Ryan, wake up!" Ethan begged, glancing at the rearview mirror. His heart broke at the sight of Lily, so tiny, sitting beside his unconscious son. She leaned forward, stroking Ryan's arm with her small hand. "You can't leave him," she pleaded again. "You're his daddy. Daddies don't let their kids go." The words sliced through Ethan. He felt his chest tighten as guilt swelled inside him. How many times had he left Ryan waiting at home, telling himself work was important? How many times had he missed bedtime stories, thinking money would give his son everything? Yet at this moment, money was nothing but paper, useless, meaningless. The city raced past, but time moved painfully slow. Every second felt like an hour, every breath like a battle. In the distance, faint sirens wailed, but to Ethan they sounded like a cruel reminder that life hung by a thread. He pressed harder on the gas. The world outside blurred into streaks of color, but he could only see two things: his son's pale face and Lily's trembling courage. Sweat dripped down Ethan's forehead, stinging his eyes. His mouth moved without thought, whispering words he hadn't spoken in years. "God, please, please save him. Take everything I own, just don't take him away." Ryan stirred slightly, a faint sound escaping his lips. Ethan's heart leapt, his eyes darting to the mirror. "Ryan? Son, can you hear me?" His voice cracked, breaking into raw sobs. But Ryan's eyes stayed closed, his small body still weak. Lily pressed Ryan's hand to her cheek, whispering, "It's okay, Ryan, don't be scared, I'll stay with you." Ethan's throat tightened again. In that moment, he realized something extraordinary. A stranger's little girl loved his son enough to fight for him when the world walked by. The car raced on, Ethan's hands locked on the wheel, his soul burning with desperation. He had power, wealth, everything a man could dream of, yet none of it mattered if his son's tiny heartbeat faded away. Every second was war, every breath was hope, every turn of the wheel was a prayer. And as the hospital's tall white building finally came into view, Ethan whispered through his tears, "Hold on, Ryan. Just a little longer. Daddy's almost there." The car screeched to a halt outside the hospital, and in seconds, Ethan was out, his son clutched tightly in his arms. He stormed through the sliding doors, his voice trembling as he shouted, "Help! Someone help my boy!" Doctors and nurses rushed forward. They lifted Ryan carefully from his arms and placed him on a stretcher. The sight of his son disappearing behind swinging doors cut Ethan's heart open. He tried to follow, but a nurse held him back gently. "Sir, please wait, we'll take care of him." Ethan's hands shook violently, his chest heaving as if it might burst. He had faced collapsing companies, storms of lawsuits, and enemies trying to drag him down, but he had never felt so powerless. He was not a CEO here. Not a man of wealth or control, he was just a father begging the universe for mercy. The hallway was cold, painted in pale colors that felt lifeless. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Every sound, the clicking of shoes, the beeping of distant machines, echoed louder than thunder in Ethan's ears. Lily stood beside him, her teddy bear tucked tightly under her chin. Her small shoulders trembled, but she didn't run. She looked so tiny against the towering walls, yet her courage filled the space more than Ethan's wealth ever could. Ethan knelt down slowly, his expensive suit wrinkling as his knees touched the hard floor. His large hands reached out to wipe the tears from her soft cheeks. His voice, usually commanding and strong, came out soft and broken. "You're so brave," he whispered. "Without you, I might have lost him forever." Lily blinked, her blue eyes glistening. She hugged her teddy tighter. "I didn't want him to be alone. My mommy says, no child should ever be alone." The words pierced Ethan like a knife. He lowered his head, his heart heavy with guilt. No child should be alone. Yet how many nights had Ryan waited for him, staring at the door that never opened until long after bedtime. How many mornings had he left before Ryan could say, "Goodbye, Daddy"? He thought he was building a future for his son, an empire of security and wealth. But in truth, he had been stealing something far more precious: his time, his presence, his love. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "You're right, Lily. He shouldn't have been alone. He shouldn't ever have to feel that." The little girl reached out with her tiny hand, resting it against his sleeve. "Don't cry," she said softly. "He loves you. He told me once that his daddy works a lot but always smiles when he sees him." Ethan's chest tightened. That simple truth, spoken by a child, carried more weight than all the speeches and advice he had ever received. His son loved him, despite his flaws, despite his absence. And he, Ethan, had almost lost the chance to prove that love back. Minutes crawled by like hours. Every second was torture. Every tick of the clock a reminder that his world hung in balance behind those closed doors. He prayed silently, gripping Lily's hand as if her small strength could keep him standing. For the first time, Ethan Miller, the untouchable CEO, the man who commanded empires, fell to his knees not for business, not for power, but for love. And in those cold hospital halls, he made a vow deep inside his heart. If his son lived, he would change everything. He would stop measuring success in dollars and deals. He would measure it in laughter, in hugs, in moments spent together. He would be the father Ryan deserved. Time moved like a cruel enemy. Every tick of the clock was a hammer on Ethan's chest. He sat in the waiting area, his elbows on his knees, his face buried in his trembling hands. His powerful suit no longer mattered. His wealth no longer comforted him. All that mattered was the tiny boy fighting behind those closed doors. Lily sat quietly beside him, her teddy bear tucked close to her chest. Every now and then, she would glance up at Ethan, her innocent eyes filled with silent hope. She was too young to understand the weight of life and death, yet she carried herself with a bravery that humbled even the mighty millionaire. Hours passed like years. Ethan paced the floor, then sat, then stood again, unable to still the storm inside him. He thought of all the times he had told himself, "Tomorrow I'll spend time with Ryan. Tomorrow I'll listen to him. Tomorrow I'll make it up to him." But tomorrow never came. And now, tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. At last, the door opened. A doctor stepped out, his shoulders tired but his face carrying a faint smile. Ethan froze, afraid to breathe. "He's stable now," the doctor said softly. "He fainted because of a sudden weakness, but he'll be fine with proper care and rest." Ethan's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, his chest heaving as tears finally broke free. He didn't care who saw him. The man who never cried in boardrooms, who never flinched in front of enemies, wept openly now. His son was alive. His boy was safe. He staggered to his feet and rushed into the room. The sight made his heart stop for a second. Ryan lying on the hospital bed, small, fragile, yet breathing. His chest rose and fell steadily, like music to Ethan's ears. Ethan rushed to his side, dropping into the chair. His large hand covered his son's tiny one, gripping it as if he would never let go again. "Ryan, my boy," he whispered, his voice breaking. Ryan's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, weakly, his eyes opened. His small lips parted, and a faint voice came out, almost too soft to hear. "Dad." Ethan's heart shattered into pieces. He leaned closer, tears spilling onto the sheets. "I'm here, son. I'll never leave you again. I promise I'll never let you feel alone, not one more day." Ryan's lips curved into the faintest smile. His fingers twitched, curling weakly around Ethan's hand. That tiny squeeze carried more power than any handshake Ethan had ever made in his life. At the doorway, Lily stood quietly. Her teddy bear was pressed tightly against her chest, her cheeks glowing with a shy smile. She didn't want to interrupt, but her presence was like a gentle light filling the room. Ethan turned and beckoned her over with a soft wave of his hand. "Come here, sweetheart. You're part of this too." Lily tiptoed forward, her eyes wide. She reached the bedside, and Ryan's little fingers lifted slightly, reaching for hers. She placed her hand in his, her tiny palm warm and comforting. For a moment, silence filled the room. Not empty silence, but one filled with love, connection, and gratitude. Three hearts, once strangers, now beat together in harmony. The mighty CEO, his fragile son, and the brave little girl who refused to let another child be alone. Ethan looked at them both, his throat thick with emotion. He realized that in this small, simple room, he had found something richer than all the empires he had built. Not wealth, not power, but love. Pure, unconditional love. And in that miracle moment, Ethan knew his life would never be the same again. Days later, Ethan invited Lily and her single mother to his home. He wanted to thank the little girl who had saved his son. At his grand dining table, Ethan lifted his glass of juice and looked at both children. "I used to think success was about money and power," he said softly. "But today I learned it's about love, kindness, and people who care." He promised Ryan he would never again put work before family. And he promised Lily's mother that her daughter would always have a special place in their lives. For the first time, Ethan felt richer than any deal could ever make him. The lesson spread quietly in that small circle of lives. In a world full of rushing strangers, it takes one small act of kindness, even from a 6-year-old, to remind us all what truly matters. And so, the millionaire CEO's heart changed forever because one little girl cared enough to stop and make a call.